What is your thesis on?
Oh my gosh. So I did gender and transformation, and my thesis was on, my God, wow, okay. It was on Ondela, and how it, the politics of revealing and concealing.
Yeah.
And how historically Xhosa people, and actually all nations in our country, have kind of been working around that in the face of colonialism and over time.
Nice. Well done. Phones off or sound?
No, silent is my everyday mood.
Yeah, no, I can't. It literally gives me anxiety. I cannot.
Yeah, because I have no notifications and I don't do vibration or sound because there's so much that needs to leave my head and
like be done. And
I ordered a whiteboard. I sent it back.
Oh, okay.
Because I was like, well, that's when I had to change my flight. I was like, I'm not paying for the whiteboard anymore. Because I do cash on delivery with Take a lot. I don't fuck around and commit right now.
Okay.
And had already just not had the cash when he would come through. Because I was like, I haven't withdrawn you here at like 10 a.m. Calm down. And I was like, actually, go back. Because I need so many surfaces to put thoughts on.
Yeah.
And just look at them. And then, yeah.
But when did you start doing your vision board?
You started at the beginning of the year.
Same weekend I cut my hair.
Oh wow.
No wait, weren't you talking about the beginning of the year though?
I redid it.
Oh,
because you know what I realized?
Okay. Yeah.
I don't do well with I get bored quickly with images. And if I can't connect an image to a thought through words, which is something I did in art school as well, my art always had some wording on it, or it was very theory heavy. It needs to tie to a story. So I first did a visual, I just did kind of word cloud, not word clouds, but
word map.
A word, not really.
Mind map.
But they were because mind map is keywords.
Yeah.
No, these were sentences on little blocks, and I'd have titles and I'd have subheadings and I'd have breakdowns.
Okay.
And then I was like, okay, I'll add images to this breakdown so I know what each thing, because by March it means nothing to me. That image. It doesn't spark anything in me. But if I can revisit the story and I know and remember how everything connects, that works.
Okay, I see what you mean.
So that's what I realized. So I cut my hair and I did
Yeah, second one.
because my aunt was away.
Second one for the year.
Yeah, and I think it's good September because that's when we have fatigue.
Yeah,
so that's the best time to refresh. Don't wait for January.
Tanking.
Yeah.
And how many key things on your vision board?
Well, you mean how many headings? Okay, it's a whole. They connect. So I've got
Is it 10 things that you see for the future?
Yeah, it's for the next. It's like a 3. It's like a 3 year, which also tells me what I'm doing for the next year. And then 5-year thing, but it's mostly professional things. Personally, I don't really feel a need to vision board because my life revolves around work right now. Right? So it's okay, heading for this, break it down. Heading for that, break it down, and then see how they cross and things like that. But it's basically it's a mind map, but it's got sentences. And then and then they connect and they break down. It's like a spider.
An outline of a heading.
It's more of an outline,
Yeah. Okay, great.
It's so effective. I felt
I really need to get on that.
I knew what I was doing. And I've got those, my box is a fold, it's a whole box that you could re-put together, and I just unfolded it because I needed those sections.
Oh, so it's not one of those that are permanently on your wall?
No. I don't hang anything. Everything of mine is portable. Nothing is unpacked. It's such a mess.
So metaphorical.
Yeah, of my life. Yeah.
It's not stagnant. It's something that moves with you.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, great.
Shame you've been recording.
Yes. So we are in conversation with Thesis ZA. Is that how would you say Thesis ZA, or when you know that ZA stands for South Africa, or is it the assumption that it stands for South Africa, or it doesn't? Or
So when she came to me with the name Thesis, the first thing that I thought was there's Thesis lifestyle that exists in Soweto, and I don't want the two to be confused. But we didn't want to make it Thesis and something additional descriptor. So we just felt, okay, if we speaking in dialogue and we say thesis, but if from a brand perspective it's ZA, that differentiates us from the Soweto
so it's
guys.
mainly a visual differentiation. You can say ZA, it doesn't really mean South Africa, but we're not really too fixated on what the ZA means. It just works on a visual and a sort of differentiation kind of.
So that we don't get confused.
Okay,
copyright law.
Yeah.
Girl.
And then obviously thesis, it's a thing that is attached to academia in terms of dissertation, or it's also like a body of work.
Yeah.
So for me, that's how I tied it to like, this is a body of work that you producing underneath. It's a thesis, yet to
South African
titled at some point. You let it grow to become what it will become, and then like artistically, I also envision it as like, then you could title it as like acts or chapters of a body of work.
Yes, I mean, nail on the head. Like,
have you literally been in our thoughts?
Yeah, when we first started using it, it was more about it was like, it felt so right, because we were coming together at a time where you would say that we had like established musical taste and identities on a personal level, and making music together felt like we were all of that was accumulating or culminating to a thesis. But obviously at the same time it's ongoing, like we are continuously producing and adding to this dissertation of, you know, all these years of being music students in literal ways and in kind of like lived ways.
And what lives under the name Thesis? What is the body of work that the two of you are producing?
So primarily it's a songwriting duo. So that's what I think the end goal is to have Thesis live as a duo of songwriters. And then Thesis ZA, the collective though, is kind of the vehicle to kind of empower and to give access to other women musicians, or queer musicians who don't always have the amount of access and privilege that some people do when it comes to things like gigging or working with particular people. So we've got a very talented girl named Uzinhle. She plays trombone, and she's an incredible singer too. And I think it's also a part of coming from a very academic background in terms of music, and then kind of like being thrust into this world of like professional acts with certain relationships and how that acts as social currency, and if you don't have that, you can't get into certain spaces. So it was a way for us to have session artists, because obviously session artists are always looking for work, but also to make sure that those session artists gain some kind of exposure through working with us. So I think it's twofold. It's us as songwriters and us as kind of collaborators with other women in music.
And then individually, where do you guys stand, and how did you come to become Thesis?
Ooh, okay. It's so tricky because we and I obviously have work lives, right? We are South African artists, and it's a great privilege that we work towards to be able to be full-time artists who are musicians who are Thesis. But I'll speak for myself. I'm someone who studied media, who's always written, and who's always been creative, had other kind of creative arts that I was involved in, very visual, and left school and walked into current affairs and journalism and filmmaking and all of that, and a little bit of sort of civil society storytelling, and that's what I did and what I still do as work, but essentially I'm a storyteller, and I'm visual, and I'm literary. And so I think that's a lot of what I bring to the table. That's kind of, it's kind of that influence in my music, which is inward, comes from the inside out, and is also how I make a living. And so I guess you can try and make sense of that constellation.
And I think that's why it's always so organic in the composing and writing process, where you're very much a lyrical thinker, whereas I'm kind of more of a musical, harmonic, melodic thinker. Because I studied throughout my life, like from the age of 8, I studied music. I was classically trained, and then I got to UCT and I studied jazz. And I think the ways that we are similar is that we're both very, very creative, and we don't necessarily know or want to stick to one discipline in order to express that creativity.
Yeah.
So while I was studying jazz, I also did an internship at SABC for journalism. I started blogging for other music organizations, and then once I left school after graduating from UCT with a media and film degree, I then ventured into digital marketing, working in corporate. So my life is, I think, in the same way yours is, very much revolves around creativity in many different forms. But I think from a thesis perspective, mine is very, very musical from a composition and arrangement perspective, and then yours is very lyrical.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you met at UCT.
Yeah.
The journey?
She came knocking on my door. We lived in the same res. We lived in the same res, and she was culture rep for the residents, and she needed an act for an event that she was putting together, a musical act, and she knew two other people in the res who she knew were kind of like musical. I was still studying at the College of Music at that time, so she kind of brought us all together, and she was like, I desperately need your help. We went into college, we arranged a couple of songs that she really liked and she wanted to hear, and then before we left, I basically said, well, I mean, if we're gonna do this, because we live in the same res, I hear you singing in the shower, in the corridors, like, we're not just gonna perform and do this without you actively participating. And literally didn't give her a choice, she did it, and for some reason we kept getting requests for more gigs because of the UCT kind of res network and how people, word of mouth and referrals and things like that. And then we went from doing covers to writing original music, and we've been doing it together ever since.
From a 6-piece to a duo.
Yeah.
And you at UCT studying music?
Jazz performance, yes.
Jazz performance.
Yes.
I was studying media and writing.
Okay.
And English literature.
Okay. And you went on to do your postgrad.
So I worked in between. I worked for, how long was it? It was 4 to 5 years, something around there. Where I worked, and that's when I was thrust into news and journalism, and then after that, in 2018, actually, I went back for my postgrad honors.
And what goes into making a song?
So many things. I think it's different for each song. Like, I personally believe that songs already exist. I honestly believe that I know how cliche that sounds, but I really believe that songs already exist, and it's kind of like how it depends on the song, and you're just shown to the song you're supposed to complete and release. A lot of the time it's heavy lifting because it's obviously two brains, and sometimes it kind of takes shape in her mind first, and then she has to bring it to me, and then I have to find a way to either melodically make it work or add lyrically, whatever the case may be. But more often than not, it's a very organic process, in that I remember one of the first songs we wrote, it was so easy, and I think that's why it was so easy for us to go from the 6-piece to just the two of us, because we worked so well together, in that she literally says one thing and I'm like, I'm right there with you. Or she sings one thing and I'm right there with you.
Got the chords.
And then the song kind of takes shape on its own, and we finish it sometimes within an hour, within an evening. Some songs take a lot more work, and I think that's what happens when you want to kind of meet the standards of what a musician should be, and that comes with having a full set for a gig. That means that you actually have to write more stuff, and then it's not as organic, and that requires a little bit more work because you also want to make it a quality product, right? So it depends on the song, and I think it depends on the state that you're in, but for the most part our relationship is a very organic writing relationship, so it comes quickly.
What was the first song that you guys wrote together?
Iphupha.
Oh, let's
and
get
that's
into
actually that's actually the one she's referring to.
Yeah, because I know that it's written by both of you, composed by Ondela. arranged, and then there's production, and there's recording,
Yes.
and there's mix and
So much
mastering.
recording.
So let's go in that order.
That order.
And since it's a thesis, they
Yeah.
treat the song as a thesis,
Yeah.
dissect it.
So intro.
Yeah.
So I know that there was a break. I just don't remember if it was a June break, a winter break, or a summer break between the time that Ondela and I were doing covers with everybody else, and the time that I came with the song to her, and it was our first original song, and we had spoken about doing original stuff, but kind of in a, by the way, Ondela had done, I think on our SoundCloud there's the South African medley, which Ondela had, I mean, it's all her, by the way, all the layers. She had recorded it, brought it to us, and it was, I think it was somehow like, I felt Pungi was packing. People were leaving res, and I went home thinking, oh my God, amazing. I want to write something, and so I sat for like, I think about 3 days trying to like finish it up, and I only had the melody obviously and the lyrics because I don't play, I don't have any instruments. Are you okay?
I'm fine. Things are falling apart. Let's not pretend like they're not.
My life.
We good.
And then I come back to res,
That's
and
once when you're writing in pieces.
It
Yes.
does. It
They
does.
fall apart and you have to start from the beginning, but we're not.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I come back to res, and it was after a gig that we had. I was
I
like,
remember that,
Yeah, it was after a gig, and I was like, I've got this song, and we were at our res sort of piano room, and I sang her the first line. And she has a great ear. Like she's a big deal, right? Like musically, she's not just like any kind of pedestrian musician, right? So
Why
because
do you-
I say that because I have zero sort of musical literacy, so I don't know how to communicate the key or the notes. I have to sing it, but there's also because of that, there are colors that I can't dictate. Like I can't actually tell her I want it to be this tone and stuff. And so that's where, you know, sort of her genius, but also our connection comes through, because after singing that one line, she literally gave me the chords that you hear now in Iphupha have been the chords forever, and she got it right the first time. And we
It literally took like 30 minutes.
Yeah.
We finished the song, and then we kind of like, it was the first song that we did, and I think after a while we just had done it for so long, and then so many people were like, you know, growing.
Different covers, like we'd match it. We'd like, there's a version I was talking about earlier where Iphupha went into Pretty Wings by Maxwell, which we are going to revisit.
And that also speaks to kind of like getting booked for gigs and now trying to try out these new things and needing kind of longer songs and more songs for, you know, a set duration of time. And so we would play around with what original music we had. And then we got approached by a guy who had quite strong ties with producers at the SABC studios. He was like, guys, I've heard your stuff on SoundCloud, like whatever you're working on or whatever you have right now, come through, like we just want you guys to record it. We went in, it took what, about a day?
A day.
I think, yeah, it was a day where we recorded, laid all vocals, did piano, strings and all that. So then
This is how many years later? Like this is years.
Oh wow!
after.
So we wrote Iphupha probably around 2013, 2014.
2013, 2012, 2013, like
2012,
end of
2013. Oh yeah, because we only started in 2012. And so it was probably about 3-4 years
Yeah.
after we wrote the song when we actually recorded it. And we worked with Rodney and Max on the production, and we finished it in a day. And then the mixing and mastering process is kind of where it gets a lot more difficult, because I think you always are cognizant of the fact that producers are different and genres are different. So even the mastering process, we were very specific about. We waited a while before mastering it, and then a friend of ours, Liso, who's incredible vocalist, released a beautiful ballad, and he worked with guys in Cape Town at the Crochet Studios, and we were like, this is the exact sound we want from a mastering perspective on the song, because it is quite an emotive and you know, very grand ballad. So we waited, we took our time, and we found kind of the right team to master it, and we got it mastered, and then we released it.
And it's so funny because I mean the SoundCloud version says unofficial, because when we put it out we were like, I don't know, like even though we were happy with the job, we still felt like it hadn't reached its final iteration.
And I think if you come watch us live, you'll see why. Like even now, if you watch us live, the way we do it, the way we perform the song, the arrangement is slightly different to the original recording that is on online digital platforms everywhere. And I think that also comes with writing together for so long and performing the same stuff for so long, is that we really get to a point sometimes where we're just like, actually, let's try this, let's do this, so that the songs themselves have a life of their own, which is always fun.
And then I know that you produce music under the big umbrella of just producing music as an artist, and there's also like a subgenre of Xhosa folks with classical influence in there. And I wanted to find out, Iphupha, is it instruments being played in studio when we're recording, or is music produced?
The piano.
Figure it out.
That's good.
The piano was definitely played in studio. The vocals obviously were all recorded live in studio, and then strings. We always thought that the song probably needed strings, but I don't think we were very precious about it until Max, who assisted with the arrangement, literally sat down. I think we were on a break. I remember I was on a phone call. I was on a phone call outside the studio, and all I heard were these incredible chords coming from, and I hate synth, like Oscar. If we are talking about recording a piece of music and anyone mentions synth to me, I'm like, I don't want fake strings. You give me a real quartet or an orchestra, otherwise I don't want it. So the fact that it caught me, the fact that it caught me, I was like, these chords are stuff, they can't go away. Like I need them. Like, and that's literally how it happened.
So the strings are synth.
The strings are definitely synth.
It's beautiful.
It is beautiful.
It's beautiful music.
Thank you.
Let's discern the realities of the music industry.
Let's go there.
What do you want to talk about? I'll throw it out.
We're not even in it.
We're not. We're kind of like chilling. In our own little space. I think that's because we're very comfortable and vocal about being songwriters. We're not necessarily in this to play on your big stages or because we are very protective of what we make, and we're also very aware that everything that we make is not meant to be sung or performed by us. And I think that comes with just
self-awareness,
but also not being selfish about the process. Like sometimes people find it very difficult to let go of things that they've created, which I understand, but I think we have a very, very solid understanding of what we're in this game to do. So I agree with you. I wouldn't think we would say we were in the industry. I think we're partaking in certain activities within the industry, and it's great that we've gotten recognition for those things. And I think we're very grateful for the opportunities that we've received because of our participation within the industry. But we're not. We're not industry gals. We're not.
We're doing the work, and we're doing the work obviously as a part of a group. There's a certain like group of emerging artists that we come up with and are very happy to be in the company of. But I think it has to be said that the decision to be independent came from, I remember Ondela and I in Res used to sit down and like go through like these old YouTube videos of like artists we used to love, and just you get curious about like where did this artist end up? And so many stories are so bad and scary of where artists who were super talented, who were just great additions to our industry, were just not nurtured and did not make it, taken advantage of, taken from, and just did not have the kind of endings to their stories that we would like to have. And so there is an understanding that from where we sit, what we're seeing is not what we'd like for ourselves. I think that there's also an awareness that in the times that we're in, publishing music, making music doesn't have to happen underneath a label. And we are truly interested in the ways in which we can produce our own music and distribute it, that will help us to stay in that place of truth and authenticity with our music, and really not turn us into people that we aren't, because Ondela and I aren't performers. Like we are writers who sing our music.
Yeah.
And we enjoy that like inner ete, you know, that connection and that transaction of energy, you know, between us and an audience. And you know, when you step into under a label, under an umbrella, there are things you have to become that we know we aren't prepared to become.
Yeah.
So it's really important for us to.
And I think it's important to also just make it clear that we're very lucky, and I am very aware that everyone is not in this position. Everyone is not in the job market where they can fund the things that they love. It's very difficult to stay independent because it's expensive. I mean, recording, producing, releasing a song can cost 10 to 15K for one song. And people who love the music, and I mean, I know they mean well, but then there's this demand for a full body of work, and a lot of people can't produce that. They can't deliver that because it's very expensive. It's very taxing. And like I said, access is a big thing. So a lot of people don't even know who to start talking to even enter that space, especially if you want to create quality products. So I think it's very important to also just note that we understand and we completely take stock of the fact that we are in a very privileged space where we can do this and not necessarily feel rushed in the process, and where we can own it and fund it ourselves.
And how would you add on to the conversation about the responsibilities that the talent or artists also need to take when it comes to the creative talent business, in terms of like, everybody has a price. You're going to be offered A, B, and C, but also know the terms and the conditions of the contract that you're going to be signing. You know that at a certain age, you don't just sign everything else. Be discerning in terms of the paperwork. If you don't understand, hire a lawyer and pay the lawyer with the lump sum, the upfront money that you're going to get, so you don't end up in a bad situation. I think also sometimes it's a conversation that we also never have and say, let's take responsibility of like how you ended up here. Because like you said, you visited other people's body of work and who they were. Like you writing a thesis, you have to read everything and find what she said, right? And you say A, B, and C, A and B said this, but C is saying this. Okay, why is C? Do you know what I mean? So what would you say or add on to say, how do you protect yourself?
Information is power, right? And we are in a time where it's not so hard to find with the internet. You know, the previous cohort of musicians probably came up in a time where information, you actually had to pay for every bit of information you got. And you spent time time that you might not have had. And there are language barriers, right? Like legalese is not easy. There are still terms with just around music that I don't understand either. But I think it's so important. I think for any other industry, if you are becoming anything, you need to know what you're stepping into, what you need to know. And I think that's really that's always been the crux of it, right? Like artists who end up not having XYZ or just being, you know, bamboozled. The common thread there is I didn't know, I wasn't told, you know, this was omitted and things like that, and how how do you get around that? By trying to know as much as possible. And I think that's why it's also taking so long, because we want to know what we're doing, and we take a small bite at a time, work with it, understand it, take the next one, and so on and so forth. And I think people don't take the time to do that because you are like, oh, I want to sing and I want to perform, and this person is saying I can make that all possible, and you don't really scrutinize and interrogate what you're being given. So that's what we're charged with, right? To empower ourselves with information.
And I think there's also a responsibility amongst ourselves in the community of performers, singers, songwriters, distributors, whatever you are, to have the conversations between ourselves. I remember a couple of years ago we did a tour overseas, and a couple of us who are, you know, within this emerging group of artists that Ayanda was referring to earlier, we're having that exact conversation about, okay, what does it mean though for so-and-so to have all of this access to information, and for this institution or this organization to carry all of that information and not make it freely available? It's almost as though you're fighting a losing battle, because everyone is trying to keep people out so that they can enjoy what little there is, what little they think there is to be shared. And I think the responsibility does lie within us, which is why the collective becomes so important, because we've entered the space, we're learning as we go, and the more people we can bring into the space as possible, the better it's going to be for people who are trying to make sure that they own everything that they make, and that everything that's rightfully theirs is kind of given to them, that they're due, because you work hard. There's a lot that goes into this, and for people to just take and take and take, all in the name of business, is it's painful. It's painful to watch people not be able to live quality lives or to enjoy breaks, because you need breaks to create quality, and you work yourself into kind of this ridiculous spaz, because there's so much that these institutions like record labels are expecting from you. So it does lie with us too, once we get into these spaces, to give access to others.
And you are currently heading into studio now?
Yeah. It's exciting. Thanks to the Red Bull Music Academy, they offered us recording time, recording space, engineers. It's going to be a really, really fun time. We're really excited. A lot of people have been asking for this complete body of work, so it's exciting to finally be able to say, okay, we have received an open door to kind of go in and make it possible. And I think it's going to be music that everyone has kind of grown to love throughout all of our gigs in the last maybe 2 to 3 years, where we've been writing more, and we're working with really, really stellar musicians. Zinhle, that we mentioned earlier, who's in our collective, Tembi Dunjan, I think is her surname, who's an incredible jazz pianist, also out of UCT in Cape Town. So it's going to be a really exciting time. It's going to be quite a femme-focused and collaborative project, and we're really excited and thankful to Red Bull for making it possible.
And then we just spoke about the structures that have been there, structures that enables artists and creative talents to flourish, to give them access. The Red Bull Music Academy gave you access, but can you still retain your autonomy and ownership? Talk me through that deal, if somebody, without obviously revealing what doesn't need to be said. What was on the table? What's the offering, or what needs to bring to the table, and that.
So I think for Red Bull, and I think this goes back to CSI initiatives that any corporate or any kind of organization and institution claim to have. It was more for them identifying emerging artists and understanding that, okay, these people don't have the access, don't have the resources to do these things. So it's a program that they ran where they identify, you can kind of actively apply, or sometimes they just reach out to people and they say, look, we see what you're doing, we can offer you a week in studio, what do you need? And for us, I think it was quite helpful that we only really had to show up with a keyboard. They were like, if you need strings, we've got a keyboard and synth in studio, we have engineers, we have a drum kit, we have whatever you need. You bring your musicians, you bring whoever you want to collaborate with. It's a week and you finish your project off. Obviously we have full ownership of it, which is great, and I think that's part of the conversation that organizations and corporates need to have about when you say outreach, when you say CSI, what do you mean? And how transparent are you with NGOs, with musicians, with artists, with any kind of collaborator or partner in that space? And I think they've been very transparent and very helpful to us, and as well as, a host of other musicians that I know have gone through the Red Bull Music Academy or Red Bull Music Studios to produce their work.
Okay. When you're gonna finish this body of work, then what happens in terms of distribution?
So because we are independent, we then have to go through the process of mixing and mastering it track by track, and that obviously costs money, and then once that's done, it's going to be released online initially, and it's great because there's some really quick and easy platforms and tools that people can use in South Africa to get their music on literally every single distribution platform online. Apple Music, Spotify, Deezer, whatever it is. You can use TuneCore. We use TuneCore. I'm sure there's another one that I'm forgetting, but it's very easy. You kind of pay a set amount per upload or distribution that you want to put out, and I think it's valid for a year until you renew it again. So it's information like that people don't really know, that you don't necessarily even have to have a physical CD, because that also takes a lot of money.
And it's antiquated, right? Like, who buys CDs anymore?
So it's more of an expense than anything else. But it really is easy. I mean, I think for us it's about $9 per track, and I think a full album probably goes for 20 or 30 or something like that. But it's affordable. You can make it work. You can make it happen. It's not as difficult to be independent if you have access to all this information as people think it is.
There's the work of getting the music to the people, which goes beyond putting it on a platform and having it downloadable. What's the point of that if no one knows it's there?
Exactly.
That's where people like you come in, right? Like people with platforms. We've done a few TV things in the past 2 months. Very blessed to be able to have been able to do that. But that's really where being an independent artist comes in, because you then become the stylist, the wardrobe person, the agent, the assistant, the manager. You are all these things, because that's where a team outside of the recording process becomes critical. Flying across the country to different TV and radio stations, trying to get people to know that you have your music out there, getting radio play. We are still figuring that out. Like, how do you get your song played on radio and avoid all the politics of it all? Those are real challenges that we are finding ourselves around and through.
I know there's quite a few, but respectively, one each, what are the two things that would really help you right now as an independent creative person in business?
2 million.
Funding. Always funding. I think that's what it comes down to. I think we have a lot of relationships that we've been able to benefit off of, and we're so thankful for that. But I think a lot of it comes down to also wanting to just pay people what they're worth. Like, everyone is struggling to make sure that their passion or their creativity or their outlet kind of feeds them, and that they can live off of it. And it's one thing to have great relationships, which we do, and we really are proud of them, and we really are thankful for them. But I think it goes far beyond that, because we want it to be something that we can also stand back and say, okay, that was an actual business transaction, and we paid that person what they're worth. So it will always come down to funding, always.
And I think next to that, funding always critical, because any kind of help, right, to get whatever you want, it's good if you can pay for it. But I think there's also just this element, and I think this is where conversations about like opening up industries, which I won't get into, become critical, because you can fund yourself, dress yourself, polish yourself to a certain level, and then you get to the door and you're polished and funded and you smell nice and you've worked really hard and you're really good at what you do, but there's a network and there's a conversation that you want a part of, and you have to kind of play around and see, is that a softer, can I poke through there, who can I talk to here? And I think that's what our institutions have not been good at, right? We don't feel like our institutions are ones which you can, walk into and make your way through. So we don't, like I said, the radio thing, like those, it's such an intangible, right? Is it a person? Is it a person inside? Is it information?
Is it a network of gatekeepers? What is it?
What do I need to be able to punch through and actually just have my music heard, because it's good and I know what I'm doing? There are doors that are closed and we do not know what the keys are. So I think that, whoever's in charge, the gatekeepers.
And then, what do you know now that you wish you knew back then?
For me, it's definitely that you don't have to sound or be like anyone else. I think my biggest challenge when I was studying performance and jazz was that I loved classical music so much, and I won't get into like just the nitty-gritty of it all, but I think being black in white schools, there's this expectation that you have to want to do the thing that all the other blacks are doing, And so my music teachers would be like, oh, but you're naturally like born with rhythm, like you should really go into jazz. And I'm thankful now, because those relationships and the relationships that my teachers and my mentors in high school had with my lecturers at UCT became really imperative when I wanted to obviously, audition and make it into the School of Music. But what I went there to study was not what I wanted to study. It's not what was, something that I've dreamt about for the longest time. I enjoy jazz music, and I think it definitely helps from a composition perspective, because I think jazz definitely breaks all the classical rules from a theory perspective. But it's not like I woke up and I was like, I want to be the next, Shannon Moday, who's an incredible female saxophonist. But like, I that wasn't my dream. And so that stuck with me, and it sat with me until like second, third year, and I was like, dude, what are you doing? Like, you don't want this. You don't. And I think a lot of us were having those conversations. You'd be surprised that, people who are literally like coming into their own right now in the music industry, who are well-respected musicians, who are fighting that same internal battle with themselves. Do you really want to keep fighting with this institution for something that you don't necessarily want as badly as people think you do? And so once I got out of that space and I was writing music that was predominantly in Xhosa that I'd never done before, and using just my theoretical knowledge of music for composing, as opposed to wanting to sound like a jazz musician, things became so much easier.
So I think, having come in as someone who, in the back of my mind, enjoyed music, felt I had a connection with it beyond just as a listener, but never ever thinking I'd be a performer. When I came in performing, and this one always made me sing the most, and
it's only fair.
And I had never sung before. I'd never sung out loud in front of more than one person. It was a lot. And what I now am starting to lean into is, you have what you need, right? You aren't perfect. You have what you need. You've been given something. You spend so much money on it, it's resonating with people. People are connecting with it, and they're identifying with it. Just take your time and work on it. Yeah. It's yours. Whereas before, I used to feel like it was something outside of me that I had to be. Probably much like Ondela, the sentiment is the same, that like there's something outside of yourself that you are striving towards. And really, the power is within us. It's just a matter of accessing it. And I'm realizing that now, that it's like, oh no, it's probably gonna, you have a tone, you have a voice, you just need to work at it and listen to yourself, and you're gonna be just fine. And it's amazing how much you come to know and be sure of when you just listen to yourself. Whereas, I think in the world we hear a lot that you need to reference so much, like, listen to this person, look at this person has the best advice, and try and be more like that person. It's like, you have it all. Just take the time and work on it. And I think that's why I'm much more comfortable with how long things take now, and I'm much more comfortable with myself, because I know I have it. I just need to just lean in and I get it, and just like, pull it out. That has saved me so much anxiety, and also to know what I'm not, and just work within what I am.
And then, since you producing a body of work that is predominantly in Xhosa, do you feel more inclined to be more deeply rooted in terms of language,
yes,
and cultural treatment, and composition, like lyrics and just words? Do you find that sometimes you need to dip deeper instead of just being colloquial about it?
I think that's part of the reason why sometimes some other songs require so much more work.
Yeah.
Because you really have to respect the process. Initially we were never coming into this to preserve any language or culture. It was just literally what felt natural to us. I can't write lyrically in English. It just doesn't happen naturally for me. And so every thought musically that comes to me from a lyrics perspective probably is always going to be in his Xhosa. And so I think that's why we take our time a lot when we do compose and write new music, because we want to make sure that we aren't being colloquial, we aren't just ticking some kind of a box, but that we're being as authentic and as true, because we have chosen now to write exclusively in this language.
I find myself, I went to and this is probably gonna show up in the album, like as a body of work. I went back to, because I was thinking, when was the first time I really fell in love with Xhosa, and not just as a speaker and the great things that even especially Xhosa women do with the language, but really as a reader. And like, when was the first time I came to know that people write novels and plays in Xhosa, and that was in grade 7. And we at the time, it was this raunchy novel that we got to read as a set work, and I was like we really enjoyed it. Like, it was kind of those, it was like the YA, like the young adults fiction but like a Xhosa kind. And I remember I remembered how much I felt, right, and because of what I was reading. It's a book called Budliza Ngolel, and when I broke down the things that made me feel those things, it all went down to language and how it was used, and discovering how deep our language is and how much it can accommodate. Xhosa can do love, and in the bowels of love, it can give you words that even English can't. It can do business, it can do culture, it can do politics. But we don't know those things, right? Because we don't spend time with it. And I felt like, I want to revisit that for myself, and I want to reproduce it for people who are listening to our music. And I think it's when you connect to that love and what it is about the language that makes you feel the things you want to feel, and what it is about it that makes it apt in communicating the things you feel. You want to do it justice. You want to get the best possible word. You want to have the best possible play, and so you must always dive in. I tried to order it from the library. I hope I can get it, that book, because it's just so important. Yeah.
Cultural radar. What's moving the needle right now?
What a loaded question. What is moving the needle right now?
So what's cultural rate? Break that question down
just
some more.
Culturally, it doesn't have to be
a musical.
No, culture in terms of heritage.
Yeah.
But within the
culture of our time.
It can be subculture or subculturally.
Okay. It's still so difficult. What is it? I almost want to say
because sorry to cut you, but I also believe that we are also at that time where the water is separating from the oil. There's a lot of critical voices. We're at that time where things are separating.
Yeah.
There's a new wave coming in. There's a new wave moving the needle. So I just want to know from you, what's on your radar that you believe is moving the needle?
I don't know. I think for myself, if I have to think about it from a musical perspective, and the people that I'm listening to right now, and the people that are really resonating with me right now, I think it's the guys that are flipping the scripts. And I think that probably comes with the fact that I have context, because I studied with a lot of them, so I know what we were taught. I know what kind of musicians we were expected to be, and to have people I every time I see people even commenting about Zoe Mudicha or her sound and what she's created, and how fresh and new it is, and you watch even on Twitter, and you're seeing people who probably have records and references from their parents and kind of growing up of jazz, but now they're enjoying it in a different way. They're enjoying it in a very kind of more commercial way, I would say. You're seeing a lot of young people fill up jazz clubs and jazz gigs, actually, and independent gigs and shows supporting each other. And I think for me it's because we're kind of in this kind of group of people that has come and taken theory, and we've kind of flipped it around. And I remember in an interview recently we were asked what are we naming this thing? What is this genre? What is it that we're doing? And we know that we're saying it's obviously has classical and jazz references, but it's also quite obviously Xhosa folk, because it is quite lyrically strong, is Xhosa. But we didn't have a name for it. We didn't know what it was. And a lot of people say that. They're like, we don't know what to call it. It's not R&B, it's not Afro pop, it's not jazz, it's not soul. But it's got hints of all these things. And I think it's so exciting to be alive and to be in a community during a time where people don't know what to name their thing because they've been so creative about it. So that's, I think, what's shifting things right now for me, is that the people that I'm obsessed with are so new and so forward thinking in the way that they're approaching their art that I don't even know what to call it.
The unlabeling.
The unlabeling.
So much of that. But I think also we are returning to quality. And not to say that we haven't had quality over the years, but there's an approach to making music that isn't so, I think the analogy that would best work is, the idea of fast fashion. Like, we've had fast fashion over the years, and now people are returning to making clothing, like tailoring and like craftsmanship. And we are this cohort that you just spoke of are also people who, as much as they are new, they are so, and I know there are elements there that are elitist, but I don't think that you can necessarily you can't teach someone to make quality music. I think it's a taste thing, and I think it's a hard work thing. But there's such a commitment to making quality music that can compete on a global scale. And when I say music, I mean the product that comes with the visuals, the artistic sort of concept around performing it, recording it and releasing and distributing it. There's such people's narratives are whole and complete, are well thought through. I think that is what's happening in this time, and that there's always been newness, right? But this kind of it's a new that is so well considered that in its newness it feels familiar and whole because it's been so carefully made. I think we're doing that. I think we can send any of the emerging artists right now to any country and go, yeah, that's our best. They can compete. Because we've I don't want to curse.
I mean, just thinking about like even the people that I'm thinking about when I was referencing like the people that I'm obsessed with right now, like Didi Luzipa took 6-7 years to record her debut album that came out maybe about a month or two ago, and she has been working, she has been writing. It's not for lack of wanting to do it or having the resources to do it. She's been signed to labels, she's had access to quite established musicians and artists, but she's been very precious about her art. Undumiso Manana, who's released a couple of singles right now, I have no doubt that he has all of the material to release an album, but you hear with every single drop that he is doing it intentionally. Langamavuso, obviously, who hasn't released a full body of work yet, and he's been very vocal about that, about taking his time, and people shouldn't rush him in that process. I think we're all just very committed to making sure that every single thing we put out has our heart and soul in it, and we're doing it right for ourselves.
So that's it, cultural radar. So Thesis ZA, it's moving the needle according to Jerry.
I love it.
Thank you so much.
Fabulous.
Thanh you, Jerry. Thank you.
Oh, gorgeous.
Yeah, you had us talking and talking. If you get us talking,
you will never.
Yeah, don't get us talking.
Oh, gorgeous.
I love interviews. I've found it it's my favorite thing.
They're a good sounding board for yourself. And you're great at them.